20 years ago, the air in the rundown suburban clinic tasted of antiseptic and desperation. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, dancing shadows across the chaotic scene. Doctors in blood-spattered scrubs moved with frantic urgency around a gurney where Melissa, pale and racked with pain, was hemorrhaging. Her newborn, a tiny, fragile girl, gasped for air nearby, her small chest struggling against the severe fluid in her lungs. Outside the operating room, a younger, raw George Walker slammed his palms against the wall, the impact echoing his shattered composure. He was just a boy playing at being a man, and his world was collapsing. He fumbled for his phone, his thumb shaking as he dialed the one number he'd sworn he'd never call in surrender. "Father," George's voice cracked, raw with unshed tears. "I need help. It's Melissa the baby, they need surgery. An emergency transfer. The doctor said $10,000. Please." The voice on the other end was a monolith of glacial indifference. "I warned you, George, that girl was beneath you. The child is a consequence, not my responsibility. She died," George pleaded, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "They'll both die. It's my daughter, your granddaughter." A cold, deliberate silence stretched across the line. "You have one choice," his father stated, the words like shards of glass. "Leave them. Walk away from this mistake. And your place in this family, your future, is secure. Stay, and you will not see another dollar from me for the rest of your life. I will sever you completely. The choice is yours." The line went dead. Overwhelmed, trapped, and utterly broken, George slid down the wall. The agonizing choice tore him apart. He would leave, but only to get the money, to find another way. He had to. He would come back. It was a lie he desperately needed to believe as he pushed himself to his feet and walked away, each step a betrayal that would haunt him for the next decades. Inside, a kind, older nurse saw the devastation unfolding. She recognized the Walker family's cruel power. With a furtive glance, she approached Melissa's sister, Fiona, who was clutching her own hands, her face a mask of terror. The nurse pressed a small, silk pouch into Fiona's palm. Inside was a jade pendant, intricately carved into the shape of a new moon. Cool and smooth to the touch, a symbolic gift meant for the newborn. "Take the baby," the nurse whispered, her eyes full of pity and urgency. "Get her out of here. Disappear. The Walkers, they will destroy you both to hide this. Go. Protect her." Fiona's gaze shifted from the fragile, struggling infant to the precious jade in her hand. Her heart, already broken for her sister, now filled with a fierce, protective terror. She nodded, a silent vow passing between the two women. She would keep her sister's child safe, no matter the cost. Present day, the scent of cheap lavender oil and stale cigarette smoke hung heavy in the air of the dimly lit massage parlor. Olivia moved with an exhausted, practiced grace, her fingers kneading the doughy shoulders of her client, Mr. Thomas. His breath, sour with whiskey, ghosted across her neck. "You've got magic hands, sweetheart," he slurred, his own hand inching from his side toward her waist. "How about we make this a more personal session?" Olivia's stomach called. She subtly shifted her weight, moving just out of his reach. "My job is to relieve your muscle tension, Mr. Thomas," she said, her voice a carefully calibrated mix of polite and firm. She just had to get through this shift. The rent for their tiny apartment was late, and Fiona's medication wasn't cheap. Fiona, the thought of her adoptive mother, her aunt, as she'd always known her, was the only thing that kept her tethered. The beaded curtain at the entrance chimed, and a wave of cool night air swept into the stuffy room. A man stepped inside, and the parlor's cheap, sleazy atmosphere seemed to recede from his very presence. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her annual income. His face was a stoic mask of hard lines and quiet authority. his eyes sweeping the room with an unnerving intensity. This was not a man who frequented places like this. He approached the worn-out front desk, his voice low but carrying a distinct weight of command. "I was told someone here might have information," he said to the owner, his tone brooking no argument. "I'm looking for an item. A jade pendant, carved like a crescent moon." Olivia's hands froze on Mr. Thomas's back. Her heart began to hammer against her ribs. A frantic, trapped bird, a crescent moon. The description was exact. It was Fiona's most prized possession, the one thing she never let out of her sight. She clutched it during her worst episodes, whispering to it as if it were a living thing. Fiona had always been fiercely protective of it, and of Olivia. "Hey, I'm paying for a massage, not a daydream," Mr. Thomas grumbled, his patience gone. Emboldened by the alcohol, he grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "I said, let's get personal." Olivia tried to pull away, a spike of real fear piercing her practiced composure. "Please, let go. Don't play co with me." She said to let go. The voice was not the request. It was a flat, cold command that cut through the thick air. The man in the suit, George Walker, had turned his attention from the owner to them. He hadn't moved closer, but his gaze was locked on Mr. Thomas's hand on Olivia's wrist, his expression unreadable but radiating a chilling disapproval. Mr. Thomas, momentarily stunned by the sheer force of the man's presence, released her wrist as if it were hot iron. He scrambled to his feet, pulling on his shirt with clumsy, intoxicated fingers. "No problem here. Just a misunderstanding." He threw a few crumpled bills on the table and practically fled the parlor. The room fell into a heavy silence. George's gaze shifted from the door to Olivia. It lingered on her for a moment longer than necessary. A flicker of something, confusion, curiosity in their depths. It was as if he were trying to place a half-forgotten memory, an inexplicable pull toward a complete stranger. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She felt exposed under his scrutiny, but also strangely shielded. Grateful for the unexpected rescue, she fumbled in her apron pocket, pulling out the few bills Thomas had left. She stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly as she offered him the money. The scent of stale cigarette smoke and boiled cabbage clung to the air in the cramped apartment, a suffocating welcome that soured Olivia's already frayed nerves. She dropped her worn tote bag by the door, the flimsy canvas thudding against the peeling linoleum. Before she could even take a full breath, Mike emerged from the living room, his face a mask of greasy resentment. "So," he barked, blocking her path, his eyes, small and hard, raked over her. "Don't tell me you came back empty-handed again." "Fiona's medicine isn't getting any cheaper." Olivia flinched. The memory of her manager's condescending dismissal, a casualty of a wealthy client's baseless complaint, was still a fresh, stinging wound. "I lost the job, Mike." The words were barely a whisper, but they hit him like a thunderclap. "You what?" He advanced on her, his voice rising to a venomous snarl. "Useless, absolutely useless. I feed you, I house you, and for what? So you can get fired. The bills are piling up. Her doctors are calling every damn day." Olivia's spine stiffened. "I will find another job. I'll go out first thing tomorrow." "Tomorrow." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Our mind is slipping away today. We need money now." He jabbed her finger toward the closed bedroom door, a cruel reminder of the woman wasting away inside. Ignoring him, Olivia pushed past and entered the dim room. Fiona sat on the edge of her bed, a thin frame hunched, her gaze fixed on the small, intricately carved jade pendant hanging from her neck. Her fingers worried the cool stone, a frantic, repetitive motion. "They're coming." "Livy," Fiona murmured, her voice a dry rasp. "To walk as they walk in shadows." "He's looking." George Walker, he'll find the stone. Eyes, usually clouded with confusion, held a flicker of terrified clarity. Danger, so much danger. Olivia's heart ached. She knelt before her adoptive mother, taking her frail, trembling hands. "It's okay, Mama. No one's coming. I'm here." She forced a smile, a fragile shield against the storm of her own despair. "I'll get your herbal medicine, I promise. I'll find the money." As Olivia soothed Fiona with empty promises, Mike slipped onto the dingy balcony, his phone pressed to his ear. He kept his voice low, a conspiratorial hiss. "Thomas, it's me." "Yeah. Mike, listen, I know I'm late, but I have a way to make it right." He glanced back through the grimy glass at Olivia. "I have a girl, my daughter, pretty, young, obedient. She's worth more than what I owe you, isn't she?" The deal was struck. His daughter's life bartered away as a mere commodity to settle a gambler's score. Miles away, in a glass-walled office overlooking the glittering city, George Walker flinched. A sudden, searing pain shot through his chest, so sharp it stole his breath. He pressed a hand to his heart, his brow furrowed in confusion. It wasn't a physical ailment. It felt deeper, a violent tug on an invisible string, a premonition of profound loss that left him cold and unsettled. Someone was in danger. The feeling was primal, illogical, but utterly undeniable. In another part of the city, Mr. Thomas leaned back in his plush leather chair, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. On the polished mahogany of his desk lay the jade pendant, its green hue almost glowing under the lamplight. He had retrieved it from one of Mike's desperate pawns. This was it, the key, not just to George Walker, but to the old man, a true seat of power in the Walker dynasty. This trinket would buy him a seat at a table he had only ever dreamed of. He picked up his phone, his voice devoid of any emotion. "It's done," he said to the man on the other end. "I have what we need. The woman and the girl, their loose ends, eliminate them. Make it look like an accident. I want it clean." They were disposable obstacles, a final, messy detail to be erased on his path to power. The hum of the city was a distant from in George Walker's office. His assistant entered, his expression urgent. "Sir, we've had a breakthrough. The pendant, your wife's pendant, it's been located. One of our informants confirmed it's in the possession of a low-level operator named Thomas." George's blood ran cold. Thomas. The name, the pendant, the sharp pain in his chest, it all coalesced into a terrifying, gut-wrenching intuition. A girl. The vague descriptions he'd been chasing for years suddenly had a face, a life, a presence he could feel across the city. She was in danger. He shot to his feet, his voice a low, commanding growl that left no room for argument. "Get on the phone with Thomas. Now," he paced, the controlled energy of a predator ready to strike. "Tell him he is not to touch anyone connected to that pendant. Tell him if a single hair on that girl's head is harmed, I will personally dismantle his entire life." Piece by piece, back in the suffocating apartment, Olivia settled Fiona into bed, humming a gentle lullaby. As she tucked the thin blanket around her mother, her hand brushed against Fiona's neck. Her fingers met only skin. The pendant was gone. A wave of ice-cold panic washed over her. She searched the bed, the floor, her pockets, her movements growing more frantic with every second. "Mama, where is it? Where's your necklace?" Fiona's eyes fluttered open. The fog had returned, but the sight of Olivia's tear-streaked face seemed to cut through it. For a fleeting moment, the fragmented mind pieced itself together. She grabbed Olivia's wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "He took it," Fiona whispered, her voice shockingly clear, laced with an ancient dread. "He will give it to them." "Who, Mama? Who took it?" Olivia sobbed, a full weight of Mike's betrayal crashing down on her. Fiona's eyes locked onto hers, a silent, desperate plea for understanding. "The pendant, it's a beacon, Livy, it calls to him. To your father. She took a shuddering breath. The name a curse on her lips, George Walker. He will find you and they will try to kill you. Just like they killed her. The air in the cramped room was thick with the scent of desperation and stale whiskey. It clung to the peeling floral wallpaper and the threadbare rug where Olivia scrambled backward, shielding the small, worn cash box with her body. The money, every last cent she'd scraped together from grueling hours of massage therapy, was for her mother's treatment. It was their only hope. Give it to me, you worthless girl. Mike lunged, his face a grotesque mask of greed. His hand, calloused and reeking of cheap booze, clamped down on her arm like a vice. Olivia cried out, a sharp, terrified sound. No, it's for Mom's medicine. She twisted, trying to wrench free, the cash box digging into her ribs. Just as his other hand rose to strike, a frail figure threw herself between them. Fiona, her eyes wide with a startling lucidity that cut through the usual fog of her illness, spread her arms protectively over Olivia. You will not touch her, she rasped, her voice trembling but fierce. Leave my daughter alone. You beast. Mike shoved her aside. Get out of the way, you crazy woman. But Fiona stumbled back to her post, a lioness defending her cub. She shielded Olivia again, absorbing the blow that was meant for her daughter. The sound of the slap echoed, a sickening crack in the tense silence. Olivia's heart shattered. Mum. Consumed by furious avarice, Mike's lips curled into a sneer. He abandoned his attempt to grab the box, a more sinister plan glinting in his eyes. Keep your pathetic money, he spat. It won't matter in a few minutes. I found a much better way to pay my debts. He loomed over them, his shadow swallowing what little light filtered through the grimy window. Mr. Thomas is on his way. A man with very particular tastes. He's paid a handsome price for you, Olivia. He's coming to collect his purchase. The words were a physical blow, knocking the air from Olivia's lungs. Sold. He had sold her like an object. The world tilted, the peeling wallpaper swimming before her eyes. Fiona began to struggle wildly, a brief moment of clarity fracturing into panicked fragments. No, not Thomas. Not him, she shrieked, clawing at Mike's shirt. He's one of them, the Walkers, they ruin everything. The devils took my sister, they'll take her too. You can't let them. Her words were a jumbled, desperate torrent, a warning Olivia couldn't fully decipher, a whose terror was chillingly clear. The name Walker meant nothing to her, yet her mother spoke it like a curse. Seeing the raw, animalistic fear in Fiona's eyes was more than Olivia could bear. Her own terror receded, replaced by a cold, numbing resolve. This had to stop. She would not let her mother suffer another moment. Pushing herself to her feet, she stood between Mike and Fiona, her chin held high even as her body trembled. Stop, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Leave her alone. She looked past her monstrous stepfather, her gaze fixed on the splintered front door as if she could will the devil to appear. I'll go with him. I'll do whatever he wants. Just don't hurt my mother. As if summoned by her sacrifice, the door burst open with a violent crash, slamming against the interior wall. A portly, balding man filled the doorway, his expensive suit jarringly out of place in the squalor. Mr. Thomas. His piggy eyes roved over Olivia, a predatory gleam of appraisal that made her skin crawl. He licked his lips, a grotesque gesture of ownership. There she is, he boomed, his voice slick with satisfaction. He stepped into the room, dismissing Fiona's frantic cries with a wave of his hand. The old woman is no concern of mine. I've paid for the girl. Olivia's desperate plea died in her throat as he advanced. Please, she's not well, but he was already reaching for her. In that instant, Fiona rallied an impossible surge of strength. With a guttural scream, she lunged, not at Mike, but at the true monster. She threw herself at Mr. Thomas, her nails scratching at his face, It was a brave, futile act of pure love. He backhanded her without a second thought, sending her crashing into the corner of a rickety wooden table. The sickening thud of her head hitting the edge was followed by a low moan as she slumped to the floor, a dark trickle of blood beginning to mat her graying hair. "Mom!" Olivia's scream was pure agony. She tried to rush to her side, but Mr. Thomas grabbed her arm, his grip bruisingly tight. "You are mine now," he growled, pulling her toward him. Just as his foul breath washed over her face, another presence filled the doorway. The chaotic scene froze. Mr. Thomas stopped mid-motion, his hand still clamped on Olivia's arm. Even Mike seemed to shrink into the shadows. A tall, impeccably dressed man stood silhouetted against the evening light. His presence was a tangible force, radiating an aura of absolute power that sucked the very air from the room. His face was a mask of cold fury, his sharp, intelligent eyes taking in the scene in a single, sweeping glance. The cowering Mike, the predatory Thomas, Olivia's tear-streaked face, and Fiona, bleeding and unconscious on the floor. He was George Walker. His voice, when he spoke, was low and lethally calm. "Let her go." It wasn't a request. It was a command that vibrated with undisguised menace. Mr. Thomas's bravado evaporated. He released Olivia instantly, taking a nervous step back. "Mr. Walker, I didn't know you were coming here." George Walker's gaze remained fixed on the smaller man, his eyes like chips of ice. "The jade pendant you promised me," he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. "Where is it?" Thomas began to stammer, fumbling in his coat pocket. "It's right here, sir. Just a small business transaction to acquire it, you see." But before he could produce it, a broken sound came from the floor. Fiona was stirring, pushing herself up on one elbow. Her eyes, hazy with pain, found George. A spark of recognition, of pure, unadulterated hatred, flared within them. Bleeding and defiant, she pointed a trembling finger at the powerful man in the doorway. "You." She spat, her voice a raw, agonizing cry that silenced everyone. George abandoned my sister," and she couldn't rest in peace. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and damning. George Walker visibly recoiled, a color draining from his face. The name, the context, the raw pain in her voice. It was a ghost from a past he had spent 2 decades trying to outrun. Shaken, his gaze shifted from the wounded woman on the floor to the terrified girl standing beside her. And then he saw it. He saw her. In Olivia's wide, almond-shaped eyes, in the gentle curve of her jaw, in the defiant tilt of her chin, he saw an undeniable, heart-stopping echo of the only woman he had ever loved. He was staring at the face of his long-lost wife, Melissa. He was staring at his daughter. The sterile, frantic world of the emergency room blurred around Olivia. Fluorescent light streaked overhead as she ran alongside the gurney, her hand desperately clamped on the railing, a futile anchor in a sea of chaos. Fiona's face was a pale, waxy mask, her breath shallow and ragged. The rhythmic, urgent beep of the heart monitor was a drumbeat of dread. "Please," Olivia begged the nurse, her voice raw and cracking. "You have to save her. She's all I have." The nurse offered a practiced, sympathetic look that did nothing to soothe the terror clawing at Olivia's throat. They wheeled Fiona through a set of swinging doors, and a doctor with tight eyes gently blocked Olivia's path. "We're doing everything we can. We need to get her stabilized. She's lost a lot of blood." "I can give blood," Olivia said instantly, pushing up her sleeve. "I'll give whatever she needs. We're the same type, and I'll crawl by like a lifetime." Olivia sat hunched in a plastic chair in the desolate waiting area, her knuckles white as she clutched the cool jade pendant around her neck. It was the only solid thing in a world that had dissolved into a nightmare. Finally, the same doctor approached, his expression unreadable. "We have a problem, miss," he began, his tone carefully neutral. During the pre-transfusion screening, we found an incompatibility. Your mother's blood type is R positive. Yours is O negative. He paused, letting the clinical fact land. Medically speaking, it's impossible for you to be her biological daughter. The words didn't register at first. They were just sounds. A medical jargon puzzle she couldn't solve. Then they coalesced into a single, brutal thought that shattered her reality. Not her daughter. The waiting room tilted. The hum of the vending machine became a roar in her ears. 20 years of memories of Fiona's lullabies, her sacrifices, her fierce, sometimes chaotic love flashed through her mind, suddenly cast in the strange, disorienting light of a lie. She was an actress in a life that wasn't her own. Unseen. Down the hall, George Walker leaned against a wall, his expensive suit looking out of place in the grim environment. He had stayed, driven by a nagging sense of responsibility, a strange pull towards the fierce young woman and her ailing mother. He had overheard the doctor's pronouncement, and the words struck him like a physical blow. O negative, impossible match. The pieces of his 20-year search, scattered and cold, suddenly began to spark with heat. His wife, Melissa, had been O negative. He turned away, pulling his phone from his pocket and walking to a secluded corner. His voice was low and commanding. Harrison, I need a priority DNA analysis. The patient is Fiona Miller, yes, the one from the accident. Compare her sample to the profile I have on file for Melissa. And I want another test run against the young woman with her. Olivia, absolute discretion. I need the results by morning. He hung up, his heart hammering against his ribs. It couldn't be. After all this time, could it be this simple, this tragic? When Olivia was finally allowed to see Fiona, she was in a private room, a frail figure lost in a tangle of wires and tubes. The frantic beeping of the ear had been replaced by the slow, fragile pulse of a single monitor. Fiona's eyes fluttered open, hazy with pain but sharpened by desperate urgency. Leave my baby, she rasped, her voice a ghost of its former self. Her fingers twitched, and Olivia rushed to her side, enveloping her cold hand in both of her own. I'm here, Mom. I'm right here. The word Mom felt strange on her tongue, her beloved title now shrouded in question marks. Fiona's eyes, clouded with regret, locked onto hers. Listen to me, she whispered, each word a monumental effort. You have to stay away from the Walker family. Promise me. Especially George Walker. Olivia recoiled, stunned. Mr. Walker. But he helped us. He is danger, Fiona insisted, a flicker of her old fire igniting in her gaze. Forget your biological father, Olive. He will only bring you pain. They all will, she coughed, a racking sound that shook her small frame. 20 years ago they took everything. They were responsible for what happened to your Aunt Melissa. The name hung in the air. Aunt Melissa, the mythical sister Fiona sometimes spoke of in her lucid moments. A story of loss so deep it had helped break her mind. Fiona's grip tightened. She wasn't your aunt. Leave. A single tear traced a path down her pale cheek. Melissa was your mother. My sister. The final piece of Olivia's world crumbled into dust. The jade pendant suddenly fell heavy, burning against her skin. Her biological mother. A woman she never knew, whose death was tied to the very man who had shown her a sliver of kindness. Before she died, Fiona continued, her breathing growing more shallow. She gave this to you. A trembling finger brushed against the pendant at Olivia's neck. She made me promise to keep you safe, away from them. From him. Her eyes were pleading, filled with 2 decades of love and fear and the terrible, guarded secret. I promised her always protect you, my beautiful, beautiful girl. Her gaze softened, a final, loving look that encompassed a lifetime. Her hand went limp in Olivia's grasp. The soft, rhythmic beep of the monitor beside her dissolved into a single, unending, soul-shattering tone. For a long moment, Olivia couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She was frozen, cradling the hand of the only mother she had ever known. The woman who had lied to protect her. The crushing weight of grief was absolute, a black hole swallowing all light. But as the minutes stretched on, another feeling began to surface from the depths of her sorrow, something cold, sharp, and hard as diamond. It cooled in her stomach and burned behind her eyes. The tears stopped, her hand tightened around the jade pendant. Its smooth, cold surface a conduit for her mother's legacy and her aunt's sacrifice. The Walker family. George Walker. They hadn't just taken her mother. They had sentenced Fiona to a life of haunted grief and Olivia to a life built on a lie. Her sorrow was not just sorrow anymore. It was fuel, it was a promise. Staring at the sterile white wall, seeing nothing but the face of the man who was her father, Olivia made a silent, ferocious vow. They would pay for every last tear. For every stolen year, they would all pay. The stale air of the hospital cafeteria, thick with the scent of disinfectant and burnt coffee, clung to Olivia like a shroud. Across the Formica table, Mike picked at a styrofoam cup, his expression a mask of manufactured sympathy. The silence stretched, heavy with the unspoken reality of Fiona's empty room upstairs. The hospital administrators were asking about the bill, Mike said, his voice full of warmth. You know Fiona didn't have insurance. This is a significant expense. Olivia, they'll expect compensation. Olivia stared at him, a cold stillness settling where her grief had been a raging storm just hours before. The woman who would have flinched, who would have apologized for the inconvenience of her own tragedy, was gone. Fiona's last, ragged breath had taken that version of Olivia with her. No, she said. The word was quiet but absolute. Forged in the fire of her loss, Mike blinked. No. What do you mean, no? Someone has to pay. It won't be me, she said, her gaze unwavering. You can tell the administrators that any debts died with my mother. She saw the flash of avarice in his eyes, the calculation of how he could profit from her pain. And it was a relief. His callousness was a whetstone, sharpening the jagged edges of her sorrow into a weapon. Before he could argue, a shadow fell over their table. Olivia looked up into the face of George Walker. He looked older than he had at the gala, his features etched with a fatigue that mirrored her own. Miss, he began, his voice a low rumble of concern. I was so sorry to hear about Fiona. I'd like to cover all the expenses, the hospital bill, the funeral arrangements. Please, allow me. Mike's jaw went slack, his eyes darting between the billionaire and the woman he'd just been trying to strong-arm. George ignored him, his focus entirely on Olivia. I also have a proposition for you. A position at Walker Group. Executive assistant. It's a good salary, full benefits. It's yours, if you want it. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The man she now knew was her biological father was offering her a key to the kingdom that had destroyed her mother. She saw the desperate hope in his eyes, the undeniable conviction that he was looking at his long-lost daughter. She felt the flicker of pity, but it was instantly extinguished by the cold fire of her new purpose. This wasn't a rescue. It was an infiltration. I accept, she said, her voice steady.